This Mysteries of the Internet, Volume 1. Oh. Hi, Bryn. Oh, fuck. I mixed up, isn't it?
It's the 22nd of November, 2019.
That's my bad.
A Ring doorbell begins recording as a young girl approaches a home in the Harriet Creek Ranch neighborhood of Texas. It's pitch black out, and the girl is seen all alone, which by itself is strange enough, but it's moments later that this footage becomes truly concerning.
Scammer gets scammed, I guess.
No, please.
New folder. Tits launcher. Let me turn that on.
Please help.
Dude, I would not open.
She was begging for help,
Holy
pounding
shit.
her hand against the door,
That's
all
scary
the
as
while
fuck.
continuously turning her head around, as if she was expecting someone to come up behind her. The footage then comes to an abrupt end,
What the
only
fuck?
to start again seconds later. But this entire time, no
Yo.
one answers that door.
Creepy ass.
The wait was just too unbearable for the child, as she then took off.
What?
Yelling incoherently in the street before running out of view of the camera. Frustratingly, this footage was only viewed by the homeowner well after the fact, and reports seem to indicate that this was a property that they rented out rather than lived in, with it being unoccupied on that night. But after seeing the video, the homeowner immediately contacted law enforcement and shared the video online in the hopes that more information would come forward, as it seems that neither they nor the police had any idea who this child was or why she needed help. But since these clips were first shared, these questions have still yet to be answered, at least publicly, as there have been no updates from law enforcement. Along with this, there have been no accounts from neighbors about the incident or any footage from other homes in the neighborhood, perhaps implying that this was her one and only stop of the night. It's like after this footage, this girl dropped off the face of the earth, with this entire situation being a mystery to this day, leaving us with only theories. The first and most popular theory is that this girl was an escaped victim of kidnapping, or perhaps an abusive household, and had run to the closest home to ask for help. We've seen situations like this many times before, with the most popular example at the moment being the case of Ruby Frankie, whose son escaped their house and ran to their neighbor for help.
Wondering if you could do 2 favors, taking me to the nearest police station. Well, actually, just one's fine.
This certainly falls in line with this girl's behavior, as she was clearly scared about someone or something following her, hence why she kept looking back. And given that there have been no updates to this case, and that seemingly no one else saw her that night, it would indicate that whoever she was running from had recaptured her shortly after. And what makes this theory even more horrifying is that many online users believe that this girl isn't the only person shown in this footage.
What? Where?
Help, please.
As in the background, some can see what appears to be movement behind the bush, and potentially even a figure.
Yo, we need to not have door cams that are super fucking tiny, like the shittiest door cams ever. Like, I mean, like, sure, you don't want to see the person's fucking ugly face in HD, like proned up against the camera, but like, come on, man.
And this just so happens to be the direction that this girl is looking in every time she turns back, almost like she knew someone was hiding there.
It's like,
which brings us
it's like you install security cameras in your mall, and it's the shittiest security camera you could possibly find. Like, no, those are for security. Those shouldn't be low quality.
Our second theory, that this entire thing was a setup. The belief here is that this girl was coerced into going up to a stranger's home to beg for help, so that when this unsuspecting homeowner would open their door, those people who made the girl do this would then rush into the home and rob the person. This could explain why she was looking at that bush so frequently, as that's where this person or these persons would have been hiding, and she was looking to them for guidance, perhaps unprepared for the homeowner not to open their door. Both of these theories are disturbing in their own right, and both clearly indicate that this girl is in need of help, regardless of what the situation is. But still, there's been no confirmation as to whatever happened to this child,
big ass head is
even
covering
despite
the way.
the public interest. One of the biggest talking points online came from some theorizing that this girl might be Serenity Denard, a then 9-year-old girl who had gone missing in February of 2019 from a children's facility in South Dakota, who looked eerily similar to the child shown in this video.
It's really scary.
But in my research, I was able to find a Facebook post from one of Serenity's mothers, who shared that they were in fact aware of the video, and that they had actually contacted law enforcement about it. And in her post, she claims that investigators told her that the girl had been identified at some point, and that she had lived in that neighborhood, with there being no further elaboration as to why she was asking for help. This is quite literally one of the only updates I was able to find, but unfortunately it was one that I wasn't able to confirm, and it also fails to explain what exactly happened to this girl, leaving this footage and this entire scenario as one of the many.
Can we stop doing this fucking camera? Can we stop doing that camera?
Throughout my time here on YouTube, I've stumbled across some of the most frightening things on the internet, but one of the discoveries that scared me the most was my own personal information, just out there in the open.
Oh my god, it's a sponsored segment.
This is all because of data broke either.
Amsterdam.
It started with a police chase. An officer parked alongside a highway in North Amsterdam had witnessed a black Mercedes speeding down the road and was now desperately trying to keep up with it. But the effort was to no avail, as the Mercedes would soon disappear from the officer's view. And when it would come back into view minutes later, it wasn't moving. It was instead left abandoned on the side of the road, the driver's side door hanging wide open, and the driver himself being nowhere to be seen, leaving that officer alone with the suspect's car, but no suspect. However, the vehicle hadn't been left entirely empty, as in the driver's rush to flee the scene, he had accidentally left his cell phone behind, and so the contents of this phone would be searched, which quickly led to the discovery of this driver's identity. But for investigators, there was a far more pressing finding on that device. A finding in the form of a minute-long video stored on the man's camera roll that indicated that this driver may have been involved in a crime far worse than just speeding.
Anytime it's like one of these horror... Alright, bro. What is he recording?
The footage was taken inside a different vehicle and showed an unseen driver holding up his cell phone alongside another man in the passenger seat. The camera was focused on a car in front of them, with both men seeming intent on catching up with it, as in the moments before this recording started, something had happened between them, which the men inside this car felt they had to get revenge for.
What?
They referred to this unseen incident as an act of brutality by a group of men in this other vehicle, and by the looks of it, it's likely that this car had simply cut them off, as there was a freshly closed lane in the stretch of road at the time, which created an unexpected merge. And this is most likely what this group inside this separate car thought too, as they were showing no signs of road rage, and were instead just casually driving with the flow of traffic. However, it's clear that the men behind the camera felt differently, as in their minds, what this other driver had done to them was so awful that it was worthy of only one punishment: death.
Bro, what? No way, they're pulling out their fucking gun, man. You got cut off, bro. It's not that serious. I mean, they're an asshole for cutting you off, but they had no choice. No.
Closer and closer to this anonymous car, while continuing their rambling about this act of brutality. And when they finally positioned themselves next to the vehicle, the man in the passenger seat brandished a pistol and pointed it directly at the driver of this vehicle. The footage from here is incredibly shaky, and the window had been rolled down, causing the audio to peak and become distorted and indecipherable.
Yeah, I
Because of this, it's hard to say for sure what happens next, but it appears that the man holding the gun attempts to fire the weapon before pulling it back into the car, cocking the revolver once more, and firing again.
Oh shit. I'm surprised.
To which both men erupt with laughter and begin celebrating before the recording stops. Based on the footage, it's unclear what happened to the driver of this vehicle or the other occupants, and finding this information became priority 1 for law enforcement.
What the
In their research, they determined that this video was shot on May 12, 2014, at around 9:40 p.m.
Damn, I was
1 full month
9.
before they had stumbled upon it, and it had been taken on the A1 highway near entrance 2101. And yet, when they checked their files to match this information with any of their cases, they realized that there was no record of this incident. This crime had never so much as been reported, despite it seeming to depict a shooting in the middle of a busy highway. To make matters more confusing, police were able to track down the men who took this video and carried out the actual attack, and yet neither of them claimed to know what happened to the people that they shot at, and both refused to elaborate any further, leaving investigators in a strange position.
I feel like
had
did they shoot
proof
or
of a
not?
crime,
Because
one that at the
I
very least
feel
was
like
attempted murder, and they also
the
had no
audio would
suspects.
capture
They
it.
just
No, the
didn't
mic would
have any
capture
victims.
the fucking
And
gunshots.
so they studied the footage even more, which is when they made a disturbing revelation about these victims. Throughout the video, the perpetrators refer to the people within this car as a group of men. And while the footage we have today
Well, I
has
didn't
the
hear it
occupants'
go
faces blurred, they were able to conclude that the driver was in fact a man. However, they discovered that the passenger next to him is clearly a woman wearing a headscarf. And most shocking of all, in the back seat was what appeared to be a child. Meaning that they had been shooting at,
bro!
which in all likelihood was a family.
Now kids
Police
gonna
released this
become
video to the
Batman
public
now.
later
Man.
that year under the name Amsterdam.
Bitch is about to go
Shoot
start fighting
Incident
crime.
Ringway
And
A10,
the
or
dark
Amsterdam Shooting Incident on Ring Road A10, where they revealed this footage that
Jesse.
disguised the voices and faces of the perpetrators for
Bro.
unknown reasons. And in releasing this, they asked the public to come forward with any information that could help identify this family. They asked for witnesses on the scene, car repair shops that may have fixed a car with bullet holes, any hospitals that had shooting victims on or around that day, and most importantly, they asked for the family inside this car to come forward, as without their testimony, convicting these men was nearly impossible, as it wasn't fully clear what crime they'd even committed. That was 11 years ago, and to this day, no one has come forward, leaving us with only theories. The first theory is that the people shot at in this footage may have been undocumented immigrants, or perhaps one of them had a warrant out for their arrest, meaning that if they were to report this crime, or if they were to have gone to the hospital with a bullet wound, then police would have certainly got involved, and in turn they would have gotten in trouble as well, essentially forcing them to stay quiet, as saying anything would put their freedom in jeopardy.
I did pretty good.
Another theory is that the shots may have simply missed the vehicle, and the driver
Based on
decided
what?
not to report it, with some believing that this whole situation was no big deal.
I basically just woke up.
But to me, this doesn't seem like something that would be so easily brushed off, especially because a child is involved. Though it is possible that perhaps this family was afraid to report the crime, as they clearly knew how dangerous these men were, and feared that reporting this crime would only further put a target on their backs. And finally, there's the theory that this weapon never fired at all.
Yeah, that's what I'm
This
saying.
is where
The
the
gun
audio
never
peaking
fired.
becomes a major factor,
audio.
as it's extremely difficult to make out the sound of gunshots, as the gun was literally outside of the vehicle when it was seemingly being fired. But it is worth noting that investigators working the case seemed confident that the weapon fired at least once, and I also personally hear a distinct popping sound at the end.
Oh.
But it's hard to say for sure. And it also is possible that this group was using blanks, with this all being an attempt to trick the other driver into thinking that he was in danger.
Oh, the
But even with these
blanks
theories,
is.
we still have no idea the fate that befell his
Blanks are
family, and it's clear that
is
they
a
have no
good
desire to come
theory.
forward, for reasons we just don't know. Which leaves the Amsterdam shooting video, an internet mystery that may never be solved.
May never be solved. What the fuck am I listening to? Hello?
Urgent, I need help, please. We are from BSAS West Zone, Castelar, San Juan neighborhood. Her name is Emma Rosario Culk, who's been missing since Friday, June 12th. If you saw her, please call. Any information will be appreciated. This post was made to the subreddit r/Argentina on June 16th, 2020 by a user named
person's cases are always
u/Naram
really fucking
Naram,
scary.
who asked for the public's help in finding a missing woman named Emma Culk.
Because I feel
And in
like
the comments,
a lot
he
of
would
missing
offer more
person's
context,
cases, they never
saying,
really
she went out to buy
find,
something and never came back. She was last seen here in the neighborhood. Sanchez and Pavan is the area where she went to buy something. She was dressed in the clothes that she's seen in the photo. She was carrying her wallet with her ID and a cell phone. Quickly, the post was inundated with concerned citizens wanting to help in the matter, with the gravity of the situation being made even greater, as earlier that day, Naram had made a similar post, which revealed that Emma Cole...
It's like, isn't it like a 24-hour window where it's like, it's safe, not safe, but it's like necessary for them. You know what I'm saying? It's like there's a 24-hour window that's they are the most optimal time to go find them.
His mother. This revelation only made the post more important, as people left comments offering support and encouragement, with many even providing advice on how he could potentially track her down, to which Naram seemed genuinely grateful. Across the entire internet, this seems to be the first post ever made on Emma's disappearance, but it would be far from the last, as people spread this information far and wide almost immediately after Naram's post, which was also followed by several local news reports, which proved that Emma was in fact a real person and was in fact missing, with these articles mentioning something that her son had not, that she was feared to have been taken.
Are they like video
The
recordings?
only thing we know for sure is that she went into her house, left her bike, and for some reason went out but did not come back in. Apparently, she did not leave on purpose, and that is what worries us the most. Things were clearly very concerning, and the tension of the situation only increased as a day passed. And then too, with Naram vowing to keep everyone updated on the status of the search. And sure enough, right after this update, Naram's missing mother would finally be found.
Oh shit.
The worst news, Emma Rosario Kolk was murdered. She had been missing since June 12th. Her son killed her with stab wounds and then buried her in the backyard of his house. He was arrested. Rest in peace, Emma.
What the fuck?
Emma Kolk had been found dead, murdered and buried in her own backyard, with the perpetrator allegedly being her own son, Daniel Kolk, who had confessed to stabbing her once in the chest and then twice in the head before burying her body in the backyard, with a motive never being given.
What the fuck is wrong with
The ending to Emma's search was disturbing, but perhaps the most shocking part was the revelation that she was killed by her own son, 20-year-old Daniel Kolk, which immediately called into question Naram's Reddit post, as he had claimed to be Emma's son, leading many to wonder, was Naram the killer? And so, desperate for clarification, someone commented, "By any chance, are you 20 years old?" To which Naram actually responded, writing simply, 25, before eventually leaving the following explanation. Apparently, it was my brother. That's what the police said when they declared the crime.
Oh my god.
This would mean that when Naram had been making these pleas to find his mother, in reality, not only was she already dead, but she had been killed by his own brother and buried in their backyard. It's one of the most chilling things I've ever come across on Reddit, but the intrigue of this case doesn't exactly end here, as there was something about Naram's story that wasn't quite adding up.
Is this a Suma story?
Just days before the disappearance of his mother, he had left a comment on an unrelated post saying, "When I was 8 years old, I wanted to ride a bicycle without hands, according to me because it was easy. I was on the street, dirt, and I let go of the handlebars. And here I am at 19 years old, with the handlebars marked on my abdomen." In his own words, Naram wasn't 25, but instead 19 years old, and potentially 20 years old by the time his mother was found, which put him at the exact age range as Daniel Kolk.
What?
This prompted a wave of speculation and confusion and spawned the enduring mystery. Who exactly is Naram? While making things even stranger, digging deeper into his posting history, you can find another comment where he claims to have been working the same job for 6 years.
You are a strong one.
The idea of him being 20,
one too many
D's
nut
even more
jokes
confusion,
in my life,
which eventually caught Naram's attention, who responded by stating, "I didn't write that. It must have been my brother. I don't use this social network. I only used it twice for a work issue and now because my mother disappeared. This account is not mine." This recounting of events made Naram's initial story even more twisted, as if this was true, then not only was it his own brother that killed the mother he was looking for, but he was literally using that same brother's account. And again, this gets stranger. Around the same time, Naram would thank the internet for its help on the case, and then proceed to swiftly disappear, leaving the account untouched for over 2 years. But this silence would be broken in 2022 when they suddenly returned, with their posts being slightly unhinged, gloating about their internet status, and bizarrely lashing out at random users who questioned him on his past and present motives. And in these ramblings, he would drop the bombshell that he wasn't actually Emma's son. He now claimed to be Daniel's best friend, writing that he allowed Daniel to make the post on his account to spread the news about his mother's disappearance, which he was completely unaware that Daniel himself had caused. This was the last real update in this case, and it only threw more fuel on the fire of this mystery, with people wondering what version of events, if any, were true. When I hear about this case today, many seem to believe that the entire time, Naram was actually Daniel Kolk, and he had made this post to make it seem like he was searching for his mother, and perhaps to even use any given advice to help conceal what he did. As remember, many were offering suggestions on how to find her, which Daniel in turn could have used to essentially do the exact opposite, to help make sure that she was never found. This is tricky because the account posted briefly after Daniel was supposedly arrested. However, the status of this case is entirely unknown to this day, as there have been no updates as to whether or not Daniel was actually charged, with some choosing to believe that this was him the entire time, and perhaps he was even held in prison for a few years before being released, thus explaining his 2-year absence. Another theory is that Naram was initially telling the truth, and that he was Daniel's brother, and that he was simply using the account to spread word of his mother's disappearance, before eventually abandoning it. And perhaps the most recent posting on this account was because it may have been hacked, which would explain the massive tone shift. Or maybe it's the most recent version of events that's the right one, and that this is actually Daniel's best friend. But why initially lie? And how do you explain the apparent inconsistencies in his age
Why would
that are
he
found throughout his posts?
snitch on his best friend? Didn't
This
like this
entire
case
internet
come
mystery is
out
one of the
because
messiest
they
I've ever
posted
come
something on
across,
Reddit?
and nothing seems to make any
Otherwise,
sense,
it would be
with
like
the
an
most
unfound
inexplicable
case.
part being the very
Or
real
am I,
murder at
or
its
am I just
core.
not paying attention?
A mother
enough,
who was
you know?
killed by her own son for no apparent reason. And given the lack of updates, it's hard to know if justice was ever served. It took several months for Angeline Pete's family to report her as missing. She had a long history of leaving home for extended periods of time, running off to join the circus and hitchhiking rides all across the Vancouver area, before eventually returning home to her normal life.
What?
But this time it felt different. None of her friends or family had heard from her since May of 2011, and it was now nearing the
Oh,
end
I
of
know
summer.
that building.
This was especially odd.
I also know the
considering that
street.
Angeline was known to be constantly texting, as well as updating her Facebook profile, with that profile now sitting completely dormant. But within that page filled with your typical selfies and normal life updates, there was one post that stood out, the final post she ever made.
Oh, I don't want to see that.
This photo was posted without context on May 20th, 2011, a day that just so happened to be the very last time that the vast
see a
majority
busted
of Angeline's
lip,
friends
bro.
and family members had heard from her. And when looking into the context of this image, her disappearance only becomes more concerning. That night, Angeline had been drinking with her fiancé Robert Calden in downtown Vancouver, and while the two were waiting to catch a ferry back home, something had sparked an argument, which eventually led to a full-on physical altercation.
Oh,
This
my
fight caused
gosh.
such a stir that eventually police would arrive on the scene, where they noted that Angeline's lip had been busted, leading to them placing Robert under arrest. Though in the end, no charges would
Hitting
ever
your
be
partner is
filed,
fucking
as
crazy, I
Angeline
feel
refused
like.
to give officers a statement and
That's
instead
fucking
insisted on
scummy.
just going home, which led to the whole thing seemingly being dropped. It was directly after this that Angeline would post this photo to her Facebook account without any sort of context, before proceeding to disappear into thin air. Her motivation for doing this isn't 100% known, but one could assume that she was trying to make a record of this attack, perhaps in case something were to happen to her. The timing of this is more than a little suspicious, and paints a horrifying picture of the potential fate of Angeline. That she had been murdered by Robert Calden as a result of their fight on the 20th of May. It's a case that seems as straightforward as it is disturbing, but that's only on the surface, as there was another factor at play here, as when the police stopped this couple from fighting on that fateful night, Robert wasn't the only one facing jail time.
There's multiple?
Angeline was no stranger to abuse. She had a long history of it herself, with her ex-boyfriend claiming to have suffered dozens of black eyes throughout their relationship, which had ended years prior. This violent behavior often stemmed from her trouble with alcohol, and Robert was clearly one and the same, with the two forming an extremely toxic relationship that often ended in one or both of them getting hurt. It was all too normalized for the pair, which was highlighted by one of Angeline's final texts, where she wrote, "Gee, my lip hurts. I hate him so much that I love him."
Ooh.
Now, I do want to make it clear that this
I
is
don't
in no way
know.
meant to come across as victim blaming.
I don't
This is
know.
vital information for this case, as Angeline's history with violence had landed her in prison numerous times, most recently in 2009 when she was arrested for getting into a massive bar fight. This arrest in particular is noteworthy, as it carried with it multiple conditions, one of which was that Angeline was given a 9 p.m. curfew, and the other was that she was not allowed to drink. with both of these conditions being broken on the night of May 20th, when police intervened in her and Robert's fight. This meant that Angeline was now likely going to be reincarcerated, and sure enough, that same night, officers arrived at her home to question her on the matter, but she failed to answer the door, which led to a warrant being made for her arrest 5 days later on May 25th. That day, a squad car pulled up to Angeline's apartment to bring her into custody, but when police entered the home, they would only find Robert, who just so happened to be on the phone with her. And officers claimed to have spoken with Angeline during that phone call, where they advised her to turn herself in, though she claimed that she was no longer in the area, and eventually hung up the phone.
The fuck?
This would be the
Yo,
last
she
time
left
that
there
officers would speak
quick.
to Angeline Pete, and seemingly according to Robert, she returned home and left the very next day on the 26th, and never came back. This whole revelation muddies the water in this case, and provides us with our second theory.
Cowboy hat.
That Angeline Pete had run away to avoid reincarceration. But there's something unusual to me about this phone call with police. Now, there's hardly any information about this case online, but from all the articles that I've read, it seems that no one in Angeline's life had heard from her after this photo was taken, with the exception of Robert. And when police spoke with her, it was only over the phone. They too hadn't laid eyes on her since the night of May 20th, prompting some to wonder if Robert had arranged for some sort of decoy to make this phone call. Though, however it happened, since that phone call, there has been no activity on any of Angeline's online accounts, and she has never deposited or spent a single cent from her bank account. From that point on, she's been essentially invisible.
She had to be murdered.
That
no
was
fucking
15
way.
years
What?
ago, and today we still have no concrete answers as to what happened to Angeline Pete, with some taking this as a sign that something sinister had in fact happened to her, as how can you go that long without leaving a trail, and without at least trying to come back? Especially in Angeline's case, as she was a mother. Angeline had a 7-year-old son who was by far the most important thing in her life. At the time she went missing, this child was staying with her father, Angeline's former partner, but she still played an incredibly active role in his life, and she wanted to be as involved as she possibly could be. And yet, after 15 years, she's made no attempts to try and reach out to him. Again, people have taken this as a sign that Angeline has perhaps been killed, and it isn't just Robert who they think might have done this, as some believe that she may have been killed by someone that neither they nor Angeline even knew. As I mentioned previously, Angeline had a habit of hitchhiking, and she was known to do so in a way that was overtly dangerous. And interestingly, there were some unconfirmed sightings of Angeline after she went missing, with some
It's like
reportedly
the
seeing her in
sketchiest
Port
shit,
Hardy
man.
and Grand Perrier, areas that she would have had to catch a ride to. Now again, these are totally unconfirmed sightings, but what's so chilling about this is that if she had been hitchhiking through those areas, then she likely would have found herself doing so along Highway 16, which is now known as the Highway of Tears. Without getting too deep into this stretch of road is notorious for its disproportionately high number of women who have gone missing on it, and especially Indigenous women, with Aboriginal organizations claiming that as many as 40 Indigenous women have been killed or kidnapped while on this stretch of road. And coincidentally, Angeline was an Indigenous woman herself, who may have found
Bro
herself
has given up
hitchhiking
with
on
his
that very
titles?
road.
What's wrong with my title?
Angeline's
wrong with it?
disappearance is one of those cases that you can convince yourself that every theory is right. But as of right now, there's just
what's my
no way
title?
to know
I
what
forgot.
truly happened to her.
Three
While this isn't
big
any
guys,
mystery for
and they
us,
bust on my
for Angeline's
eyes.
family, this couldn't be more real. Many of them are suspicious about Robert and believe that police didn't do a good enough job investigating him, as he was never even considered a suspect. But they also hold out hope that Angeline is still alive and out there somewhere, and they'll often hold events and vigils to keep
How's
her
your day
name in the
going, Emmy?
spotlight, and to assure she knows that she can always come back home. And it's this hope that has fueled her son since she disappeared, as all throughout his childhood he played hockey as a way of helping to find her, with one family member saying, "That's why he wants to play hockey. So if he gets famous, his mom will find him."
This title, joining stream and say something about child murders or something is wild. It's about missing persons cases. Thank you, Buns, for the attendance. Appreciate it.